Hello again, this is Thomas with Classic Electric. Today I want to talk to you about portable generators. We're here at the electrical panel. There are three things that you need for a portable generator, other than the generator itself. You need a mechanical interlock, that's here. You're going to need the wiring that goes from here, which in this case goes down and out, and I'll show you in a moment. And you need the actual power inlet as well to plug in the generator. Let's go take a look at this. So this is the inlet here. Never mind, this is the air conditioning disconnect. Never mind in this case. But here's your inlet where your generator is going to plug in. So you got your panel up above. You got wiring that comes down, in this case, down below into this garage, and then comes out into the inlet. Now we're going to go on ahead and plug in the generator cord, which I already have set up. And now we're plugged in. Now let's take a look at the generator. Okay, so here's the actual generator itself. This is actually my generator. It's my own personal generator. So I'm going to recommend Duromax. This is my system. I ended up getting one of these because every customer I had one of these. And I kind of thought when it came time to buying one, I go, well, that's interesting, because I was going to get a Honda. And when I start looking into a Honda, and it's like 3,000 plus, and I'm like, for crying out loud, these are like 1,200 bucks. And every customer I got has one. So I was like, I think I'll get one of these because everybody I know's got one and everybody likes them. So I got one. This is my personal unit. This is a dual fuel generator. Means this is your gas tank. It'll take gas or it'll take propane, either or. Nobody I know uses gas. The reason nobody uses gas is because they have ethanol in the fuel these days, and then the fuel basically the ethanol gets turned into water and it gums up the carburetor, and then we have all kinds of problems. So we don't want to have that issue. If you run with propane on a dual fuel system, or natural gas on a tri-fuel system, gas, propane, natural gas, you can stay away from the fuel. It doesn't gum up the carburetors. I've had this unit for about 5 years and I've never had so much as an issue, and anybody else I know who runs these hasn't had an issue. So I think they're wonderful. This is a 50 amp outlet. On this particular one, I live just out of town, just a little bit. So I have a septic system, so I'll talk in a well. So I'll talk to you about that in a moment. So for just out of town, I recommend a unit that has a 50 amp outlet. If you're in town, a 30 will typically get you by because you don't have to worry about water. To start the unit, which I'm not going to do because you won't be able to hear me in the video because I'll be screaming over the top of it with this thing running. It's not that loud, but it's not that quiet either. All you got to do to start it is you'll flip the switch, hit the start button, and it'll run. For any reason, there is a battery in here. For any reason the battery should fail, which it hasn't for me, but if it did, it also has a manual pull system as well. So if the world's coming to an end, you have no power to the house, the battery goes dead, at least you could pull it. But again, I've never had to, but it's nice to have that system. All right, let's go inside and talk about water. If you're out of town, you have one of these. The reason this is important is because when you're picking a generator, this is why I was emphasizing that my unit has 50 amp outlet on the unit, because 30 of it is getting used up by this guy when it's actually running. So the way this works is this is your holding tank, your pressure tank for water if you're out of town. If you're in town, you have water all the time, even when power goes out. But if you're out of town, your well pump motor isn't operating when you need water. It uses the electricity, it brings the water into this holding tank, and it fills up to here. As you use water, it drains down, gets to here, and then it kicks on automatically under normal usage, and then fills it back up to here, and then it stops again. So in the case of the generator, if this was full right now, and you turned your generator on and you had your well pump on, nothing would happen because it's full of water. But as you use your toilet and a little bit of water in the sink and whatever you're going to do for the next 48 hours while your power is out, it's going to draw down as you use water. And when it gets to here, the generator is going to use more usage to fill this back up. Well, if you have a 30 amp unit like you would in town, that's going to be this entire system. So it'd be more likely your unit would shut off if you had just a 30 amp unit for an out of town and trying to back up a system like this. That's why I recommend if you're out of town, you have one of these guys, you're going to want to have at least a 50. Okay, so now we're back to the panel. So we've shown you the inlet. We've shown you how to plug it in. We've shown you the generator. It's attached to the fuel. We're going to stimulate and say that it's running because the power is actually on right at the moment. We haven't lost power yet. And you've seen what happens if you're out of town. You've got a pressure tank that has water if you're out of town. If you're in town, don't worry about that part of it. So here we are, back to the mechanical interlock that we talked about, one of the three components that's important. This is probably the singular most important thing that you can have when doing a portable generator, because you don't want your generator and your utility power on at the same time, or you can have a really large explosion. So you get to have utility power, normal power, or you can have a generator, but not both. So this is the actual interlock itself right here. I'm actually going to facilitate and show you, once you've got your generator running, once the power is off, what to do next. So I've obviously already installed the interlock in this panel. And this is what you would do first. First thing you're going to do, and if you have any questions and you forget what I'm telling you, the operating instructions are right in here. They come with the interlock kit. So if you forget anything, you can just always refer to the step 1, step 2, step 3. First thing we're going to do is we're going to turn the main breaker off. Yours might be here, maybe here, but either way, find your main breaker. So we're going to go on ahead and turn that off now. So in theory, I've just simulated a power out because now the power is actually off to the residence. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to turn off all the breakers. All the breakers are off. Generator's running. Now, this is the interlock part of it. This, because this is off, will now raise up and allow that to turn on. But only this is on or only this is on one at a time. Right now, I cannot turn this main breaker back on because of the interlock. Now that I've got the generator breaker on, the generator is back feeding our electrical panel and everything that is in this panel. I will look at my labeling here and I will determine what it is I would like to turn on. In this particular application, I know I want to turn my well pump on so that I can have water. And I know that that's number 4 and 6 here. So I'm going to go on ahead. Actually, it's 6 and 8 here. And here's 6 and 8 right here. I'm going to go on ahead and turn those on. I know that I want my microwave on because I might want to actually make some food later. That's number 20. I'm going to turn it on. I'm also going to want to turn on, obviously, my freezer and my refrigerator. And those are also listed. Number 13 is my refrigerator. And my freezer downstairs is number 12. And here is the modem in the upstairs bedroom, which also in this application turns on the TV in the living room, because if I'm not going to be doing anything for the next day while the power is out or however long it's out, I want to be entertained. Generally, that is what most people want if your power is out. Now, it's going to change a little bit if you're in town and you have a gas furnace. Then obviously you're going to find your furnace breaker in here and you're going to go on ahead and turn that on, because as long as you have natural gas, everything's flowing, all that's fine. All you got to do is make sure your breaker for your furnace is on, and then you're going to have heat. If you're out of town like we are, we don't have a natural gas furnace, we have an electric furnace. I'm not going to turn the electric furnace on because it draws a lot of power. So I'm going to go on ahead and focus on just the areas that I'm planning on being in, which is going to be a bedroom, the living room, the family room, and maybe some lighting throughout, because everything's converted over to LED mostly these days, which is awesome because now the generator isn't running very hard because it's not pulling as much power like it would if you had an old school 100-watt incandescent light bulb, for example. So these are the bare bones minimums that typically you're going to want. Now, if you have a larger generator like I do, which a lot of us do, that's going to allow you to turn on some additional circuits in here. For example, your water heater. If I really wanted to take a shower, I could turn the water heater on. I've already got the water system already on. But typically the power's not out for usually more than a half a day or a day. You know, it goes out in the middle of the day, it comes on, you go to bed at night, you turn your generator off, it comes back on. Usually it's on by the time you're up in the morning. So those usually aren't an issue. These are your minimums. The beauty to this is I can cycle loads. I can turn some of these off and turn some others on, and turn some others off and turn some others on, as long as I don't exceed the expectation of my generator on the amount of power that it can use. Today, this is the greatest way to do a generator panel. You take your existing panel and you just put a mechanical interlock in. A lot of people have a separate sub panel that's right here where they take some of these circuits out and they put it into here, and then you're only able to use the circuits that are in your generator panel. If you do it this way, I can access everything that's in here and everything that's in this little side panel over here. So it makes for a wonderful system. When the power comes back on, the first thing I'm typically going to do is go out and turn the generator off because it doesn't need to be running anymore. So I'm going to walk back out there. I'm going to turn it off. Power is going to go off. Then I'm going to come back up here now that the generator's off. I'm going to go on ahead and turn my generator breaker back off. It's going to drop the mechanical interlock down, which will then allow me to turn back on the main breaker. And then I can go back and systematically start turning all the breakers in the house back on one by one. And then I can go on ahead and put the generator up, roll up the cord, and I'm all done until the next event. People always ask me, how much propane do I use? Typically, I'm going through a 5-gallon bottle of propane that you saw out there in one day, approximately, using the circuits that I had on. If you're using more power, you'll use a little bit more. Now, one thing I want to bring to your attention, when I say bottle, it's a 5-gallon bottle. I don't mean all 5 gallons, because you got to consider, if you're running on that thing for 6 hours, that bottle is getting all frosty on the outside because you've been using it continuously. So you'll find when you go to fill up your propane bottles, there's typically always 1 gallon left in there because it's starting to get a little thin in there by the time you run on it that many hours. So I might get 6-7 hours on a bottle, but to be clear, what I'm talking about is I'm only using 4 gallons, not the whole 5. That's why I usually have 3 bottles of propane. Typically, I never use more than the 2 during an outage. I just have that third one in case something really goes wrong, but usually I'm not using that much propane and I'm able to power up the whole place. And with all the LEDs and the efficient appliances and stuff these days, things work out really well. Another thing I want to bring to your attention also is the labeling. If you have an exceptionally well labeled panel, then you can really pick and choose what do you want to use, because you know what your power usages are, because you know it's just the living room or just the family room or just the back bedroom. Because you got to imagine in a bedroom, you're not using much power. You're going to turn the light on in the ceiling typically, but there's not much power usage there. So you're like, you know how many circuits you can turn on. You're going to listen to the generator and you're going to hear it run at a certain decibel level, and then you're going to add a few more items and it's going to, I know this sounds dumb watching me do this, but that's what it sounds like. There's going to be a point that if you over too much energy and too much power usage, what'll happen is eventually the generator will stop. Well, that's not the end of the world. You just turn everything back off, restart the generator, and then slowly turn everything back on. But by having a well-labeled panel, that's typically not going to happen because you're going to know exactly what's in here and you're going to know how much you can put on there from experience. You'll hear the decibel of the generator and you'll get used to after a while how much power you can put on just by listening. I am going to accompany this video with another video on how to label your panel correctly, and so you can identify the circuits quickly, especially in a generator system like this. If you have any other questions, feel free to subscribe. This is Thomas at Classic Electric. Thank you very much. And this is a wrap.